Hey class, Prof JC here. We're talking again about mental models. That's all we're talking about the entire semester. I think that mental models are the way to think, and I'm not the only one, right? There are billionaires out there that have made tons of money and they credit, and it's not about making money. They built great businesses. Let me say it that way, because becoming a billionaire is not about making a lot of money. And the greatest billionaires of all time, they did it because they built great companies, or they built companies, whether you think they're great or not. It's just they built something that the marketplace needed, and they were able to multiply that thousands and thousands of times and made billions of dollars. But several of them, Charles Koch, Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, Ray Dalio, I'm sure there's a couple others that I'm missing, they credit, right? Steve Schwarzman, I think he even talks about this. They credit mental models in terms of how they're able to think about certain situations, right? And they credit these mental models as helping them get where they need to get to and make the right decisions in life. So what I want to talk about today, the mental model that we're going to talk about, but I need to I need to share my screen with you. So let me go ahead and do that. Share my screen. Let's go to full screen here. We'll come over here. Okay. So here's one thing, and we're out. Right now we're on a great blog. I really love this blog, and I recommend that you look up this blog, fs.blog, and it's named after Farnham Street, and they actually have a reason. I think it actually has to do something with Warren Buffett. I think that might be the name of his where his offices are, Berkshire Hathaway. I'm not exactly sure, but anyway, this is an incredible blog. They have a lot of mental models on there. I'm not going to read through everything, but this mental model, we talked last week about systems thinking. This week, we want to talk about this idea of first principles thinking. This is important when you're making decisions. You're trying to figure out, why did something end up the way it ended up? Why is it the way it is? You can even do this with a person. Why is this person in front of me the way they are? You've got to come back to this idea of first principles thinking. So there's a couple ways to look at this, but I'm going to try to really simplify this for you. And again, this is a great mental model for you to take into your own life, your own leadership. Let's read a little bit from the site in front of me. First principles thinking is one of the best ways to reverse engineer complicated problems and unleash creative possibility. Sometimes called reasoning from first principles, the idea is to break down complicated problems into basic elements and then reassemble them from the ground up. It's one of the best ways to learn to think for yourself, unlock your creative potential, and move from linear to non-linear results. This approach was used by the philosopher Aristotle and is used now by Elon Musk. He talks a lot about it, and Charlie Munger. Okay, these are two billionaires that talk a lot about mental models and first principles. Actually, Elon Musk talks a great deal about this, and so does Charlie Munger. It allows them to cut through the fog of shoddy reasoning and inadequate analogies to see opportunities that other people miss. There's a quote here by Richard Feynman. I don't know what's the matter with people. They don't learn by understanding. They learn by some other way, by rote or something. Their knowledge is so fragile. Let's come down to the basics. A first principle is a foundational proposition or assumption that stands alone. We cannot deduce first principles from any other proposition or assumption. It is the key. It's the core. Okay, and I'm going to give you a good example here in a second, but you need to understand, it's like the keystone. It's a building block that stands on nothing else. It's like when you drill all the way down into an issue, it's like the fundamental issue. It's there, and it can't be related to anything else. It is a first principle. Okay, it stands alone. Aristotle, writing on first principles, said this: in every systematic inquiry, which is methodos, I hope I'm saying that correctly, where there are first principles or causes or elements, knowledge and science results from acquiring knowledge of these. For we think we know something just in case we acquire knowledge of the primary causes, the primary first principles, all the way to the elements. Later, he connected the idea to knowledge, defining principles as the first basis from which a thing is known. The search for first principles is not unique to philosophy. All great thinkers do it. Reasoning by first principles removes the impurity of assumptions and conventions. What remains is the essentials. It's one of the best mental models you can use to improve your thinking, because the essentials allow you to see where reasoning by analogy might lead you astray. I don't necessarily want to go into all this, but you can get on the blog and you can actually read this, right? Here's what I'm going to do. So Techniques for establishing first principles listed here, right? There are many ways to establish. Socratic questioning can be used to establish first principles through stringent analysis. This is a disciplined questioning process used to establish truths, reveal underlying assumptions, and separate knowledge from ignorance. The key distinction between Socratic questioning and normal discussion is that the former seeks to draw out first principles in a systematic manner. Socratic questioning generally follows this process. Okay, so here we got it right here. Question number 1: clarifying your thinking and explaining the origins of your ideas. Right. So why do I think this? What exactly do I think, right? So when you're stopping to make a decision, these are some questions you can ask. Why do I think this? What exactly do I think? Then you move into challenging assumptions. How do I know that this is true? Well, what if I thought the opposite way? Okay, so if you're making a decision and you're kind of set on one, right? So then you ask, well, how do I know this is true? And then you say, well, what if I thought from the opposing side? That gets you to think outside of your own box of what you think is true, and now you're starting to see it from a different perspective. Then you look for evidence, right? How can I back this up? What are the sources? So you're getting ready to make a decision. This is really important for you, okay? So how do I back this up? What are the sources? Then you consider alternative perspective. What might others think? How do I know if I'm correct? Then you examine consequences and implications. What if I'm wrong? What are the consequences if I am? And I would actually write there, what if I'm right? And what are the consequences if I am? And then 6, questioning the original questions. Why did I think that? Was I correct? What conclusions can I draw from the reasoning process? Again, these are great ways, right, to figure out first principles. You can also come down to the because I said so, or the 5 whys. The 5 whys are really key. Anytime you have something in front of you, right? So children instinctively think in first principles, just like us. They want to understand what's happening in the world. I got in trouble for this all the time. I got in trouble for this when I was in the Army. You know, they'd give us rules and stuff, and I'd constantly be questioning why does it work like this? I always wanted to see the big picture. And I think even to this day, I work better when I see the big picture. To do so, they intuitively break through the fog with the game some parents come to hate. Why, right? Here's an example that is played out numerous times at my house. And then he gives an example, right? Why? But here's the reality. You can do the same. Anytime you're related, anytime something comes to you, just ask the question why, right? You're faced with a decision, right? Why is this decision important? And then write that out. And whatever the answer is, so let's say you're facing a decision about taking a new job. Why is this decision important? The first thing comes to your mind, because I need to make new income. I need to make more income. Why do I need to make more income? And you write that down. I need to make more income because maybe I'm not paying my bills, or because I want that new boat, I want that new house. Why do I want that new boat? Why do I want a new house? Right? And so it takes you in two separate directions. You might say, because I need to pay my bills, or I want my kids to go to, let's say the reason is I want my kids to go to private school. Okay? Then you break that down. Well, why do I want my kids to go to private school? And you can break that down, right? So I want them to go to private school because it's a better education than it is for public school. You know, I want to be able to, I went to private school and I want them to, whatever it may be. And then you start looking at the opposite of those answers, right? So as you're writing these out, then you start looking at, so let's say you say, I think private schools are better. And maybe going back to the whole line of question, if you want to put these together, you begin to say, well, is that a correct assumption? Are private schools actually better? And then you start doing some research. And you start to look into it and say, well, maybe if my kid went to like a public Ivy or something like that, they don't necessarily need to go to private school. Or maybe private schools aren't any better and kids don't come out and make better jobs. I don't know, right? So this is how you make the decision. Why? But it comes through asking questions. That's the most important thing with any mental model, is you're learning how to ask yourself questions. And I would say start with these right here, right? When it talks about this Socratic questioning, just consistently ask yourself, why do I think this? What exactly do I think? How do I know this is true? What if I thought the opposite? Again, you can get all this right there on fs.blog. First principles, I want to show you a couple of different diagrams, and then we'll get to our question, okay? So this is kind of from Elon Musk right here. Again, it goes to the Socratic questioning. Again, you could find this. And you know what I'll do? I'll actually link these pictures that I'm showing you, I'll link this below the video, right? So if you want to look this up, you can yourself. Socratic questioning, clarifying your thinking. Why do I think this? Why exactly? So we just talked about that. Elon Musk has 3 questions, right? Identify and define your current assumptions, break down the problem into its fundamental principles, create new solutions from scratch. Okay, so here's what that looks like. Okay, and here's why I think that this is so important. Oftentimes when we're making decisions, if you're looking at this diagram, we're all the way over here and there's a huge mess. Or, you know, we're leading an organization and it's an organization that's been around 30 years and now it's got all of this, right? And we're trying to figure out, how do we get this organization to where it needs to get to? What you've got to do is break down the noise and go all the way back to where it's at the very beginning, right? So let's say you're asked to come in and change a bank. I don't know. I'm making this up as I go along, but let's say you're asked to come in and you're going to be the new assistant. No. Let's make you higher than that. You're going to be the new assistant branch manager, not the branch manager, but assistant branch manager. But your job that you're given is you got to get this bank turned around, right? It's losing profits. It's losing customers. They're losing customers to the bank across the street or Citibank, whatever it is, or maybe they're losing customers. Maybe it's a locally owned bank and they're losing, customers to the larger ones or whatever, whatever the issue is. And let's say that's the issue. They're losing customers because people are going to Citibank or they're going to Chase or whatever. They're going to larger ones, right? Your job then, what you may want to consider is say, well, what made this bank great in the first place? And you go all the way back over here to first principles. And maybe what you realize is that in the process, this bank got away from what its true calling, if I can use that, was. Maybe its true calling is we want to be a bank where when you walk in, we know your name. We want to be a bank where you come in and we help you make good financial decisions. We want to be a bank where we're open 24/7. I don't know what it is, or we're family oriented, right? We're a family oriented bank, and so we'll help you put money away for college. Whatever it may be. Right? But there's certain principles that the founder of the bank said, this is going to be a family-owned bank. This is going to be a community-based bank. And this bank, here's what we do. And over time, what you begin to see is you've drifted from that. Now you're all the way over here. And now you're a bank. You're trying to compete with Citibank. You're trying to compete with, with Chase. People walk in, excuse me, and they have that same sense of coldness, that nobody knows your name. That every time they go there, they're going to be meeting with somebody new. They have a loan process, and they got to go through 5 different, loan processors to get the loan done. Whereas this other bank, the original foundation was, we're going to be personable, and we're going to make sure that this is a family bank where we know your name, and you walk in and we feel trusted. Now, maybe the economy's changed. Maybe a lot of things have changed where you can't do it like that, but somehow you've got to get back to that, right? So you've got to figure out what were first principles, and so you go all the way back to say, here's what we are now, here's what we started off was, and that's when you begin to make decisions. Okay, so that's another thing. Another thing is if you're trying to understand what a person is, right, who a person is. I remember years ago, and you can't ask this now, but I remember years ago back in the Midwest, I would be asked questions such as, tell me about your parents. Tell me about your relationship with your parents. Tell me about your, what your family rituals were, whatever. I remember sitting in an interview, I think I was 17 or 18, and I was asked those questions. Now, of course, you can't ask that now. You'd come up, you'd come on under so much fire. But here's what this company was trying to do. They were trying to figure out, who is this person? And in order to figure that out, we've got to go all the way back to the beginning. What's the relationship that this kid has with his parents? And they're probably thinking, if this kid is coming to us, this young man, and if he has a poor relationship with his father, he's probably going to have a poor relationship with every person in here. He's probably going to have a poor relationship with every male boss we give him to. If he has a poor relationship with his mother, he's probably going to have a poor relationship with all the women we have here in the workplace. He's not going to be able to, build good relationships with the women here, healthy relationships with the women in the work environment. But if he has a good relationship, obviously it's different, right? He talks positively about his dad. We know that they've got a good relationship, positively about his mom. We know about their family unit. He understands the sense of community, right? So they understand that. Again, you can't do any of that today. But I think sometimes we might be missing out, right? In trying to figure out who a person is, you got to go all the way back to the beginning, right? And as much as you can, I'd say as a leader, if you earn trust, I'd say do that as much as you can with the people you lead. If you're trying to figure out a person in front of you, why they're working hard, why they're not working hard, sit down with them, take them out to lunch, right? You don't need to ask them in front of a bunch of people, but as you feel the trust beginning to be built, ask them the questions about, hey, tell me about your growing up years. Tell me about your family, right? And maybe if someone who's not working hard, go back and figure that out too. Hey, tell me about your growing up years. And you start to figure out, well, they had a lot of dysfunction and they moved from job to job. And maybe they had a dad to move from job to job to job to job. And you begin to make pieces together and you can figure out, how do I help this person in this situation? I hope you're understanding kind of what I'm talking about. First principles, again, you go all the way back to the basics. Anytime you need to make a change, anytime you need to figure something out, you go all the way back to the fundamental. You just dive into it. That's why the 5 whys or the 7 whys or 10 whys, you ask why as many times as you need to get all the way back to what is the real issue here that's going on. So between that, you said, I need to take this job because I need this raise. Maybe you figure out you really do need the money, right? And you figure out you have really good motives for why you want to send your kids to private school. But maybe you go all the way back and you figure out, I just want a boat. And I want to boat because I want to impress my neighbors. I want to impress my neighbor because I feel really bad about myself because I'm not the person I need to be. And I feel really bad about myself because I had a horrible relationship with my parents. And then you're like, wow. So I almost took this huge promotion. I almost moved our entire family all the way across the country because I feel bad about my relationship with my parents. I need to do some work around that, right? So first principles always takes you back to the back, and I promise you it will help you make great decisions moving forward. So here's the question I have for you today. I want you to think about this. Where is a time in your life that you had to make a decision and where first principles could have helped you? Okay, so that's the first part. And as much as you feel comfortable, again, I'm the only one who reads this and it goes nowhere. It's just you and me here. So I want you to find that out. And then I want you to say, okay, moving forward, what is the kind of decision that I will use first principles for moving into the future? So I want you to think forward thinking. What may be a decision that's going to come your direction in the future? And if you're younger on the call today, I'm just going to give you a hint. It could be the person you marry. Okay, I'm going to let you figure out why that might be important to you, but it could be that, right? It could be a career, right? I'm just giving you some hints here, but I want you to forward think and say, what could be a decision that's coming up for you, and how will first principles thinking help you out? So again, look at it and say, is there a time in your life when this could have helped you? Okay, I want you to look back and say, is there a time in your life where first principles thinking could have helped me make a better decision? And then I want you to forward think, what could be coming in the future for you, and how could this idea of first principles thinking help you make a better decision? That's all I got for you this week, and I hope you're you're gaining a ton of value from these mental models, and I hope that they save you a lot of problems. They help you make a lot of great decisions, and help make a lot of money, and help you make a great leader, great business executive, all that kind of stuff in the future. So thanks so much for listening. I'll see you next week. Take care.